Hey guys, tonight we drift back into a world where paper walls whisper and bamboo groves hum with the sound of cicadas. You open your eyes, and suddenly, you're standing in a narrow street lined with wooden houses, each one leaning slightly, as if bowing in respect to the next. Smoke curls from a distant fire pit, and the faint tang of miso soup teases your empty stomach. Welcome to feudal Japan. The air smells clean, sharp with pine and burning charcoal, but the silence around you isn't peace. It's control. The kind of quiet that watches, judges, and remembers. And here's the catch, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink once, and the 21st century vanishes. The soft buzz of electricity gives way to the creak of sandals over packed dirt. The world here runs on a different rhythm, a mix of obedience and unspoken fear. The year is somewhere around 1550. The Ashikaga shogunate has fallen into chaos, and Japan is splintered between lords. Daimyo, each carving out power with armies of samurai. You don't know the language, but the message is clear in every face you pass. Stay small, stay quiet, and maybe you'll live until sunset. A farmer trudges by, balancing 2 baskets of rice seedlings. His back bends at a perfect, right angle from decades of work. He doesn't look at you. He wouldn't dare. Looking directly at someone who might outrank you could mean punishment, or worse. Hierarchy here isn't just social, it's spiritual. The world is built like a ladder at the top, the shogun below him, the daimyo, then samurai, peasants, artisans, and merchants. You, however, have landed somewhere below all that, an outsider with no place on the ladder at all. That's the first rule of this world: everyone belongs to something, or someone. You try to ask where you are, but the villagers scatter like leaves in wind. A young boy stares at your strange clothes, then giggles until his mother shushes him sharply, bowing to you and dragging him inside. You realize then, status is everything, and ignorance of etiquette can be fatal. Even a sneeze at the wrong time could mark you as a fool. The wind shifts, carrying a faint drumming from the distance. It's rhythmic, almost hypnotic. You follow it, past a rice paddy reflecting the pale sky, until you see them. Samurai in lacquered armor, practicing sword forms. Their movements are impossibly fluid, like water finding its path downhill. The leader, his face hidden behind a menpo mask, turns his head slightly toward you. You freeze. For a moment, the world stops breathing. Then, mercifully, he looks away. That's when you feel it, the unspoken truth that defines feudal Japan. This isn't your world. Here, even the act of standing in the wrong place can be read as arrogance. There's a word for this strict order wa, meaning harmony. It's not the gentle kind. It's enforced harmony, the sort that breaks you down until you fit perfectly into the pattern. Historians still argue whether this rigid order was the secret to Japan's long stability or its greatest tragedy. But in this moment, walking barefoot through a world of rank and ritual, you feel its weight pressing on your chest. You wander toward a marketplace, drawn by the clatter of wooden sandals and the smell of grilled fish. Stalls are lined with pickled vegetables, woven baskets, and ceramic bowls. Simple, beautiful, every curve deliberate. You reach for one, tracing the glaze, and the merchant bows, not smiling but trembling slightly. He's waiting for you to pay, or to punish. You fumble for coins, realizing you have none. He bows deeper, muttering apologies you can't understand, and slides the bowl away as if touching it had stained it. You're an anomaly here. Foreigners are ghosts, omens, or worse, trouble. The people of this era have heard rumors of strange pale, skinned traders on the southern coasts. bringing guns and foreign gods. You'd fit that rumor perfectly, and that's dangerous. A sudden shout cuts through the hum of the market. A mounted messenger rushes by, banners fluttering behind him. The crowd parts instantly, everyone bowing low. You hesitate a second too long, and a farmer beside you tugs your sleeve urgently, forcing you down with him. Your forehead touches the dirt. The hooves pass so close that you feel their vibration in your chest. When you dare to lift your head again, everyone's watching. Some look pitying, others horrified. One old man whispers something you don't catch, then spits softly into the dust. A warning gesture. In their eyes, you've disrespected someone's retainer, maybe even a samurai. That's the kind of mistake that can cost lives. You try to back away slowly, keeping your eyes down, heart pounding. Every instinct tells you that apology isn't enough here. In feudal Japan, justice doesn't scale evenly. It cascades. The fault of one commoner can bring punishment on an entire village. You can practically feel the suspicion curling through the air like smoke. Later, you find yourself near a small Shinto shrine, its paper charms fluttering in the wind. You kneel, imitating others, and notice a priest watching you. His robe is plain but spotless, his hands clasped around a wooden staff. He murmurs a chant, and the people bow. You do too, unsure what god you're addressing. The priest smiles faintly, either amused or merciful, and moves on. For a heartbeat, you feel invisible grace. That grace fades quickly when a patrol of Ashigaru foot soldiers marches past, armor clanking, spears glinting. They're poorly paid, hungry, looking, and alert for anyone suspicious. One spots you and tilts his head. He mutters something. Perhaps, "Where's your village?" But you can only shake your head. He laughs, a dry, humorless sound, and waves you off. You exhale. For now, luck is your only lord. The sun slides lower, turning the world amber. You wander toward the riverbank, watching a woman wash clothes. Her movements methodical and graceful despite her rough hands. She catches you staring and looks away quickly. That tiny interaction tells you more than any textbook dignity. Here isn't about freedom. It's about restraint. In the distance, a temple bell tolls. You follow the sound, drawn like a moth to warmth. The temple is wooden and weathered, its pillars carved with dragons and clouds. You sit on the steps, feeling the grain of the old timber beneath your palms. A monk approaches silently and offers a cup of tea without a word. You nod, sip, and nearly choke. It's bitter, earthy, alive. He chuckles softly, his eyes glinting. He says something simple. Perhaps. Be still. You don't need translation. You sit together in silence as dusk gathers, watching paper lanterns blink to life along the paths below. Somewhere in the distance, a shamisen twangs softly. You think back to your own world. Cars, screens, chaos, and realize how loud your life had been. Here, the quiet isn't peace. It's a rule, one enforced by centuries of fear and discipline. Yet, beneath it, there's beauty. Fragile, deliberate beauty. Even the way people bow or pour tea feels like art. As night deepens, you curl near the temple wall. Exhausted, your stomach empty but your senses full. Crickets sing. Smoke rises from distant hearths. The monk leaves a small bowl of rice beside you before vanishing into the shadows. You hesitate, then eat slowly, each grain precious. You'll remember this. The taste of humility, the price of survival. The first day in feudal Japan is ending, and somehow, you've lived through it. But sleep won't come easy. You sense tomorrow won't be kind. This world demands obedience, silence, and perfect timing. And you have none of those. As the wind rattles the paper lanterns, you whisper to yourself, one day, just one day. The night answers with silence, vast and patient. Dawn breaks with no mercy. You're jolted awake by the shrill call of a rooster and the thump of wooden sandals on packed dirt. The mist hangs low over the fields, turning everything grey and damp. Your neck aches from sleeping on the temple's wooden veranda, and before you can stretch, a small boy with a shaved head, probably an apprentice monk, nudges you urgently. He points toward the road and whispers something sharp. You don't understand the words, but the tone says everything. You can't stay here. You stumble to your feet, brushing dust from your clothes, and bow awkwardly toward the temple. The monks ignore you, moving in silent rhythm as they sweep the courtyard. You catch sight of the older monk from last night. He inclines his head ever so slightly. Respectful, but final. You've been shown hospitality, and now it's over. In this world, even kindness has a schedule. You follow the dirt road into the village proper. The air smells of smoke and fish, and from every doorway, you hear the scrape of tools, the soft slap of wet laundry, the drone of morning chants. The whole place feels like a beehive, each person locked into a role so precise that your very presence buzzes out of tune. A farmer passes, carrying a bundle of bamboo poles across his shoulders. His feet are bare, caked in mud. He doesn't look at you, but you notice the deep lines carved into his face, years of sun and servitude pressed into his skin. He bows automatically when a man in finer robes walks by, head lowered so deeply it almost brushes the ground. And that's when you see it for the first time. The invisible chain that binds everyone here. Rank, position, duty. This isn't just a polite habit. It's the architecture of survival. You could map Japan in this era not by rivers or mountains, but by social levels stacked like a tower. The emperor at the very top's more symbol than sovereign, then the shogun, military ruler and de facto king, then daimyo lords who govern territories, followed by samurai warriors, and finally the commoners, farmers, artisans and merchants. You belong nowhere. And in feudal Japan, being outside the system is worse than being poor. It's being untouchable. You find yourself drawn toward a group of farmers, kneeling in the fields. They move in slow unison, hands in the mud, planting rice seedlings one by one. The water glimmers around them, reflecting the rising sun. A man glances up at you, frowns, and gestures for you to leave. You bow clumsily, mimicking the movement, and retreat. One of them mutters under his breath, something like, "Atar," a word that sounds heavy with contempt. Later, you'll learn it means unclean, a label for those at the very bottom of society. Butchers, tanners, gravediggers, and outcasts. You've been mistaken for one, and maybe, in their eyes, that's fitting. Historians still argue whether the caste rigidity of feudal Japan kept order or strangled innovation. What's certain is that everyone knew their place. You could be born with the wrong surname and live an entire life apologizing for it. And that's what crushes you most. The quiet, unquestioning acceptance. You pass a small house where a woman in a faded kimono kneels at her doorway, arranging rice offerings for her ancestors. Her daughter helps, maybe 10 years old, her fingers careful as she places incense sticks in a tiny earthen pot. You stop to watch the ritual, but when she catches your gaze, her mother tugs her inside instantly. The paper door slides shut. Respect in this society means distance, and curiosity can be mistaken for intrusion. A shout breaks the morning calm. Down the road, 2 men are arguing, one dressed in plain hemp, the other in armor light enough to move easily. The armored man's hand rests on the hilt of his sword. The other bows frantically, pressing his forehead into the dirt. The samurai spits a word, laughs, and moves on. The peasant stays bowed long after he's gone. You want to help, to say something, but your instincts stop you. This isn't a movie. Here, a samurai's sword isn't symbolic, it's law. The samurai class, you realize, are the real power in this world. Warriors bound by the code of Bushido. Loyalty, discipline, and death before dishonor. But that noble ideal often masks a darker truth. Those below them live in constant fear. A single misstep can become a spectacle of punishment, not just for the guilty, but for anyone nearby. You walk past the scene, heart thudding. The peasant still hasn't moved. It's like watching gravity made human, weight pressing everyone down, each person bending just enough not to break. By noon, the air grows hot, thick with humidity. Sweat trickles down your back. You follow a line of villagers toward a communal well, hoping to drink. But when you reach for the bucket, the crowd parts silently. No one speaks. But every stare says the same thing, outsider. You lower your hand, pretending you weren't thirsty at all. To distract yourself, you wander into a side alley lined with wooden signs. One shows a brush and scroll, perhaps a calligrapher's shop. Another displays a fan, suggesting a fabric dyer or artisan. These are the middle ranks of society, people who craft beauty for those above them. You peek through a doorway and see a man bent over a sheet of rice paper, drawing ink strokes so deliberate they seem to breathe. He's writing kanji, each character balanced like a miniature painting. When he looks up, you bow slightly. He nods back, then gestures toward the inkstone. You step inside, curious. The air smells of soot and pine resin. He dips his brush, writes a single symbol, then hands you the paper. It's the character for wa. Harmony. You recognize it from yesterday's temple bell. You try to say thank you, but the word fails in your throat. Still, he seems to understand. For a brief moment, two worlds touch through silence and ink. Outside, the streets have grown louder. A small procession moves through the village. Drummers, a few armored guards, and at the center, a man carried in a small palanquin. The villagers kneel instantly, pressing their faces into the dust. You hesitate only a heartbeat before dropping to. The air feels electric. You sneak a glance. The man inside wears layered robes, his expression unreadable. A local lord, perhaps, a daimyo or one of his officials. The drummers slow, then stop. You hear orders barked, the rhythmic click of sandals, the swish of banners in the breeze. Then they're gone, and the villagers rise, whispering prayers of thanks that no one was noticed. A woman near you sighs in relief, muttering something about the taxes being fair this season. You almost laugh. Fair. The word doesn't belong here. Yet, in her voice, there's sincerity. Fair means not getting your house burned down. Later, you climb a small hill overlooking the rice fields. The land stretches endlessly, patchwork green and gold. From up here, it's beautiful, peaceful even. But you know better now. Each neat square represents backbreaking labor, each grain of rice a life measured in obedience. Feudal Japan looks calm only from a distance. You hear a soft flute below, someone playing a simple tune. It drifts up through the warm air, haunting and pure. You close your eyes. For the first time since arriving, you almost relax. But then the flute stops, replaced by the clang of a temple bell. The sound rolls across the valley, reminding everyone it's time for afternoon prayers. Or perhaps curfew. You can't tell which. You descend toward the village again, passing a cluster of children, chasing a wooden hoop. Their laughter feels like rebellion, tiny sparks in a world that teaches silence. One boy notices you and waves shyly. You wave back, and his mother gasps, pulling him away. You sigh. Even kindness here must follow the rules. By twilight, you've learned more about feudal Japan than any textbook ever could. It's not just samurai and cherry blossoms. It's tension woven into every breath. Every bow hides calculation. Every smile conceals caution. You start to understand why people here walk softly, why they speak in half phrases, why harmony matters so much. Because disharmony, standing out, can get you killed. As you lie down beneath the eaves of a farmhouse that night, the crickets return, chirping in endless rhythm. You stare at the dark sky, scattered with stars. For a brief second, you imagine what it would be like to belong here. To know your place, to stop thinking, to live a life written for you from birth. Maybe it would be easier. Then again, maybe not. You're from a world that worships freedom, even when it hurts. And here, freedom is the most dangerous dream of all. You close your eyes and whisper to yourself, 2 days. Let's see if I can make it 2. Somewhere, far off, a temple gong answers. Low, patient, eternal. You wake before the sun does, to the low rumble of voices outside. The village is stirring again, the air damp with river fog, and the faint metallic tang of wet earth. You blink away sleep, and realize you've been lying on a woven mat, left out under a wooden awning. Someone, maybe the farmer's wife, covered you with a rough hemp blanket during the night. It smells of smoke and rain. A kindness. A quiet one. You step outside and immediately sink ankle deep into mud. The rice paddies stretch before you like mirrors, catching the first blush of dawn. Farmers already stand knee deep in them, bent at impossible angles, their silhouettes ghostly against the mist. Each movement, plant, press, repeat, is slow and practiced, part meditation, part survival. You're about to wave when a stern voice barks something sharp behind you. A man with a straw hat and a ledger slung from his belt strides toward the fields. His robe is cleaner, his posture straighter. He's not here to help, he's here to count. A tax collector. He calls names, marking each with a flick of his brush. When one old farmer fails to respond fast enough, the man's assistant, a younger, meaner-looking one, swings a stick lightly across his shoulders. Not enough to wound, just enough to remind. You feel your jaw tighten. The farmers don't flinch, they bow. In feudal Japan, rice isn't food, it's currency. It pays the lord, feeds the army, and defines a person's worth. Historians still argue whether this system was efficient or cruel, but as you watch, you don't need a debate. You see it etched into every back that bends before the collector's brush. You edge closer, watching as a woman pours her family's measured portion into a wooden chest. She keeps a single small bowl for herself and her children, eyes down. The collector nods, satisfied, and moves on. Her shoulders sag. That's what fairness looks like here, barely enough to stay alive. The irony hits you hard. The empire's wealth rests on those who eat least. The samurai feast on rice polished white, while the farmers who grow it survive on brown grains and barley. You remember something a historian once wrote, that feudal Japan's peace was built not on swords, but on rice bowls. Standing here now, you can taste that truth in the air. A sudden laugh startles you. Behind one hut, a group of boys chase each other with sticks, pretending they're swords. Their laughter cuts through the heaviness like sunlight through clouds. You watch them duel, their katana clattering harmlessly. One shouts something heroic, another falls dramatically into the mud. You can't help but smile, even here. Imagination survives. An old man notices you watching. He sits cross-legged nearby, mending a fishing net. His beard is white and wild, his hands knotted with age. He gestures for you to sit. You do, gratefully. He offers you a cup of barley tea, lukewarm, bitter, but comforting. He speaks slowly, using simple words. You catch fragments. Daimyo, tax, rain. He points to the sky, then to the paddies, then taps his chest. His meaning is clear enough. Life here depends on balance. Rain, rice, obedience. Too much of anything, and you drown. You nod, murmuring thanks, and he smiles faintly. Then, almost playfully, he picks up a rice stalk and twirls it. You think samurai strong? He asks in halting Japanese. You nod, of course. He shakes his head. Farmer stronger. Samurai die hungry if we stop. He chuckles, a dry, crackling sound. Then, softer. But farmer die first if we try. You sit together a while longer, watching the sky pale. He hums something low. A harvest song, maybe. The rhythm matches the motions of the farmers in the field. Plant, press, repeat. The melody feels ancient, older than war, older than the shoguns who claim the land. By mid-morning, the collector leaves, his chest of rice loaded onto an ox-drawn cart. The farmers straighten slowly, stretching their spines with quiet groans. Some laugh softly, relieved. Others just stare at the departing cart, faces unreadable. You wonder how many of them will make it through the next drought. You wander toward the village square. The smell of cooked millet drifts from a nearby hut, and your stomach growls. A woman squats beside a clay stove, stirring a pot. She looks up, sees you hovering, and after a moment's hesitation, gestures for you to sit. You bow deeply in gratitude and do so, careful to keep your knees folded properly. She ladles a bit of porridge into a small bowl and passes it to you. It's warm, bland, and heavenly. You try to thank her, fumbling through the few words you've picked up. Arigat gozaimasu. She covers her mouth, laughing quietly, then corrects your pronunciation, the way a teacher might with a child. For a brief moment, the world softens. Humanity flickers through the hierarchy. Then a shout splits the calm. 2 guards rush into the square, barking orders. Everyone freezes. A horse clatters up, its rider draped in dark armor. His banner bears the symbol of the local daimyo. He reads from a scroll, announcing a new edict, an increase in rice quotas, effective immediately. The villagers bow, murmuring obedience, but the air feels thick with despair. You glance at the woman beside you. Her face doesn't change, but her hands tremble slightly as she gathers her children close. You want to say something comforting, but there's nothing to say. Historians still debate how much power the common people really had in this system. Some claim villages had self-governing councils, others that they were puppets of the lords. Watching this scene, it's clear both can be true. There's resilience here, quiet and stubborn, a kind that hides under obedience like a knife in its sheath. By afternoon, the sky darkens with gathering clouds. Thunder rolls faintly across the hills. You find shelter under the eaves of a storehouse. The old farmer from before joins you, wiping rain from his hat. He glances upward, muttering something like a prayer to Inari, the rice god. You follow his gaze and spot a small shrine tucked beneath the eaves, a fox statue guarding it, offerings of sake and rice at its base. He bows 3 times, and you mimic him. The rain begins to fall, steady and cold. You talk, or rather, gesture, through the downpour. He tells you of his youth, of famines, of wars between daimyo that turned villages into ashes. His voice grows softer when he mentions a son lost to service, which you take to mean conscription. He doesn't weep. He just looks out at the rain and says, "Rice still grows." That line lingers with you. The rain turns to mist, and the fields shimmer again, green and alive. Life here is relentless, cyclical. No revolution, no escape, only endurance. As night creeps in, the villagers gather around small fires, sharing what little they have. Someone passes you a rice ball, sprinkled with salt. You take it gratefully, feeling the warmth spread through your cold fingers. Across the flames, a child begins to sing softly, a lullaby, sweet and slow. The others join in, their voices low and steady. It's a song about the moon blessing the harvest, about the dead watching over the living. You can't understand all the words, but the feeling is unmistakable belonging. For a few minutes, even you feel part of it. The fire crackles, and the stars begin to show through thin clouds. The air smells of smoke and wet grass. You close your eyes, full and tired, thinking about the day's lessons. How rice rules all, how kindness costs courage, how silence is the strongest language here. You wonder if, in your world, you could ever endure this much structure, this much stillness. Maybe we all have our own feudal systems, just with different lords. As the song fades, the old farmer pats your shoulder once and nods toward the temple on the hill. "Tomorrow," he says softly, "work again." Then he smiles, a small, cracked smile that somehow feels enormous. You nod back, realizing you've survived another day. Barely. But here, that's a victory. You wake to the faint metallic clink of a sword being drawn. Not near, but near enough to freeze your pulse. The morning fog hasn't lifted yet, and through it, you can just make out two figures on the path outside the farmhouse. One kneels, head bowed. The other stands tall, hand resting lightly on a curved blade at his hip. His armor gleams wet with dew. Even from here, you can feel the weight of his presence. Samurai. The kneeling man is apologizing, his voice thin, desperate. The samurai listens unmoving. Then, just as calmly, he sheathes his sword and walks away. The farmer crumples forward, still bowing long after the warrior has gone. You exhale, realizing you've been holding your breath the entire time. This is the reality of feudal Japan's most famous class. The samurai, those mythic figures of loyalty and grace, walk among the common folk like lions in a flock of sheep. Their every gesture carries law, their every silence judgment. You step out cautiously, the air cool against your skin. The farmer straightens, notices you, and shakes his head slightly, a warning not to speak. You understand. The samurai's world isn't yours. It never will be. You start down the same path, careful to keep your eyes lowered. In this world, respect isn't earned. It's displayed, constantly, like breathing. And nowhere is that more essential than in the shadow of Bushido, the samurai's code. Historians still argue whether Bushido truly governed the samurai's daily lives, or if it was a later invention, a romantic myth layered over centuries of violence. But whatever its origins, its grip on the culture is real. You can feel it in the way every man walks, the way every woman bows, the way every silence holds meaning. You reach a clearing where several samurai are training. The air thrums with the sound of bamboo swords striking wooden posts. Their shouts, sharp, rhythmic, echo off the trees. You watch from a safe distance as one instructor corrects a younger warrior's stance with a single tap of his stick. The younger one bows deeply, grateful for the correction. The instructor notices you, his gaze steady but not hostile. He gestures toward a wooden post, as if inviting you to try. You shake your head quickly, hands raised. The group laughs softly, not cruelly, just amused. One of them tosses you a practice sword anyway. The wood is heavier than you expect, solid and humming with history. He demonstrates a simple movement. Step, swing, return. You mimic it awkwardly. Your feet slide too wide, your shoulders too tight. They laugh again, but one gives you a nod of approval. The gesture feels like sunlight in this rigid world. Cut clean. The instructor says slowly, in careful Japanese, mind before muscle. He taps his temple. You repeat the motion. Mind before muscle. You understand. Then, as suddenly as it began, the training ends. The samurai sheathe their blades and bow toward the instructor, then to the shrine at the edge of the field. The discipline is absolute, beautiful in its own way, and terrifying. When they leave, the clearing feels strangely empty, as if their presence had weight, and now that weight has gone, the air can finally breathe. You set the practice sword down and sit on a rock, watching steam rise from the morning grass. The samurai's world, you realize, isn't just about war. It's about ritual. Every action, no matter how small, carries purpose. Tea ceremonies, calligraphy, sword polishing, they're all ways of disciplining the self. There's a quiet arrogance in that, but also grace. Later, you wander into a small town clustered around a castle's outer wall. The air hums with controlled chaos. Merchants hawking wares, women in layered kimonos carrying water, soldiers patrolling the narrow streets. You spot a samurai crossing a bridge, his daisho, the paired long and short swords, gleaming in the sunlight. Everyone stops talking as he passes. Even the dogs go silent. You bow instinctively, though you know it's imperfect. He doesn't acknowledge you, but you feel the heat of his gaze as he walks by. A child beside you whispers, "Kira-sama," then bows again for good measure. The reverence borders on fear. A shopkeeper, seeing your puzzled expression, leans close and whispers, "Samurai born to protect, die to obey." Then, under his breath, "Sometimes they forget which comes first." You thank him and move on, thinking about that. Protection and obedience, two sides of the same coin. By midday, the sun burns high. You duck into a tea house for shade. Inside, the world feels different. Soft. The tatami mats smell faintly of straw, and a woman in a plain kimono pours tea with ritual precision. Every movement is deliberate. Poor bow present. You mirror her bows as best you can, trying not to insult the art with your clumsy foreignness. She smiles faintly and places the cup before you. The tea is pale green, earthy, and bitter. It's nothing like what you drink back home, yet somehow it tastes more real. A samurai sitting nearby glances your way, curious. He's older, maybe in his 40s, his expression unreadable. "You are traveler?" he asks in halting English. His accent is thick, his tone polite but edged with curiosity. You nod cautiously. "Just passing through." He chuckles softly. "Everyone passing through, some longer than others." He studies his tea. "In our world, peace means knowing one's place." He looks at you then, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Do you know yours?" You shake your head, half smiling, half afraid. "Still figuring it out." He nods, satisfied, as if you've given the only honest answer possible. "Good. Samurai forget sometimes too." Then he drains his cup, bows to the hostess, and leaves. You sit in silence, the words hanging like incense in the air. Later that day, you find yourself following the sound of a flute toward the castle gate. Beyond the moat, its stone walls rise like a mountain, banners fluttering from its turrets. This is the seat of the local daimyo, and beyond that gate lies the real machinery of the samurai order. The political web of loyalty and fear that keeps the whole country in motion. You won't be going inside, of course. Commoners aren't allowed. You stand at the bridge's edge, watching the guards change shift. Their armor clatters like wind chimes. You can almost imagine what it's like beyond the walls, rooms lined with tatami, scrolls of battle plans, armor displayed like relics. But beneath that splendor lies exhaustion. The samurai aren't just warriors. They're bureaucrats now, administrators, keepers of peace during an era with fewer wars than ever before. Historians still argue whether this peace was a blessing or a slow suffocation for a class born to fight. You turn to leave and nearly bump into a young samurai, barely older than 20. He steadies you with one hand and bows apologetically. You bow too deeply. For a moment, his composure cracks. He smiles, almost shyly. Then, with practiced ease, he's gone. You watch him disappear into the fog, wondering what kind of life that is. To live by a code that prizes death as much as honor. Night falls quietly. The town glows with paper lanterns. Somewhere, a biwa player sings a mournful tune about loyalty and loss. The melody weaves through the streets, wrapping around you like mist. You think of the samurai training at dawn, the tea master's precision, the old warrior's riddle about peace and place. You lie awake under a shrine's eaves, the stars reflected in the moat nearby. You whisper the words again. Mind before muscle. Maybe it's a lesson worth keeping, even back home. As sleep pulls you under, you wonder whether the samurai dreamed too, or whether they simply waited for the next sunrise to sharpen their blades again. The morning mist rolls low across the rice fields, clinging to your legs as you trudge along the muddy path. The air smells of wet earth and smoke. Someone nearby is burning straw to clear the stubble from last season's harvest. You're no longer startled by the early morning laborers, men and women already bent double, pulling weeds or carrying water buckets balanced across their shoulders. Their movements are rhythmic, almost meditative, but you can tell it's not serenity, it's survival. You've seen how the samurai live, their armor polished and their rituals precise. But now, It's time to see how everyone else keeps that world turning. Because here, in feudal Japan, most people don't wear silk. They wear the land. A farmer waves at you from the edge of a field, his hands dark with soil. "Traveler," he calls. You eat. His offer is genuine, if cautious. You accept with a bow and follow him toward a small hut made of thatch and mud walls. The inside smells faintly of fish and wood smoke. His wife kneels by the fire pit, stirring a pot of rice gruel. Steam fills the room like a soft curtain. She greets you with a polite nod and sets out 3 bowls. The food is plain. Rice boiled thin with vegetables, maybe a scrap of dried sardine for flavor. You try not to stare at how little they serve themselves. Even so, they smile as you eat, clearly proud to share what they have. It's humbling. The samurai may rule by sword, but the peasants hold Japan's real heartbeat in their hands. The rice they plant, the harvest they gather, the taxes they pay. You help the farmer repair a section of bamboo fencing after breakfast. The rhythm of tying, weaving, and securing the stalks feels almost peaceful. "We serve the land," he says, smiling faintly. "And the land serves the Lord." His tone suggests this balance is sacred, though you can sense the exhaustion beneath it. Historians still argue whether peasants in feudal Japan truly believed in their own social harmony, or simply accepted it because rebellion meant annihilation. The truth, as always, probably lies somewhere muddy, like your sandals right now. A boy runs up carrying a wooden bucket. He's maybe 10 years old, with sharp eyes and bare feet, toughened by years of work. "Father," he says, pointing down the road, "taxmen." You see them before you hear them. The jingling of coins, the faint creak of an ox cart, the measured stomp of straw sandals. 2 samurai in dark armor approach, flanked by scribes carrying ledgers. The villagers bow instantly, faces lowered. The lead samurai stops by your host's field, inspecting the young rice shoots with the detachment of someone judging art. "Harvest looks thin," he mutters. "Yes, my lord," the farmer says, bowing so low his forehead almost touches the ground. "The rains were late." "Then pray for better weather," the samurai replies flatly. He gestures to the scribe, who marks something in his ledger. "Tax due, regardless of rain." You feel your jaw tighten, but the farmer's calm never wavers. When the samurai move on, he exhales slowly. "We give rice," he says quietly, "and maybe they leave enough for us to live." You help him stack bundles of straw for drying, trying not to think about how fragile that balance is. Around midday, the village gathers near the communal well. It's the only time the peasants allow themselves a sliver of leisure. A group of women laugh softly as they wash vegetables, while a few men share news from nearby towns. Someone mentions a traveling monk who healed a child's fever. Someone else talks about a samurai duel outside Kyoto. The gossip spreads like wind through grass. Gentle, harmless, essential. Then, unexpectedly, a cheerful melody rises from across the square. A man in tattered robes and a straw hat plucks a shamisen, its notes dancing in the sun. Children gather, their faces lighting up as he sings about fox spirits and trickster gods. You can't help but smile. For a few minutes, the hardships blur into the background. The minstrel pauses, cups outstretched for coins. A woman drops a few grains of rice instead. He bows deeply, accepting it with gratitude. As the day wears on, the air thickens with humidity. You join a group of workers tending the irrigation channels. Narrow ditches carved by hand to guide water from the mountain streams into the fields. The system is ancient but ingenious. One misplaced stone, though, and the entire field could dry out. "Don't step there," an old man warns as you balance on the narrow path. "That mud's older than you." You chuckle, nearly slipping anyway. He grins. "See? Told you." Later, as the sun begins to sink, the village priest appears. An elderly man with a shaved head, his robes patched in places. He carries a small drum and chants softly as he walks, blessing the fields. Spirits of water and wind, he murmurs. Watch over the harvest. You bow as he passes. Religion here isn't a separate part of life. It's woven through everything, from planting to birth to death. Over dinner that night, you ask the farmer whether he's ever dreamed of leaving. He laughs, shaking his head. Where would I go? The mountains are full of bandits, the city full of taxes. He gestures around the hut. Here, at least, I have sky. That thought stays with you long after dark. The night hums with the sound of frogs, and the occasional bark of a fox. The stars feel close, as if watching over the tiny village. You lie awake on your straw mat, thinking about the lives you've seen. The warrior polishing his blade, the tea master perfecting her pour, and now the farmer tending his field with reverence that borders on devotion. Each one bound by duty, each one carrying the weight of centuries. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows too early. A woman's voice scolds softly, followed by laughter. You smile into the darkness. The next morning, you help gather the first bundles of rice. The process is slow, deliberate. Cut, tie, lift. Sweat runs down your back as you work beside men and women who have done this their whole lives. The stalks scratch your wrists. The scent of earth fills your lungs. Good. One woman says approvingly, handing you another bundle. You work like someone who knows hunger. It's meant as praise, and you take it that way. Because here, everyone works like that. Like hunger is always waiting just beyond the horizon. By noon, your body aches. The farmer's wife offers you water flavored with pickled plum. The salt and soreness jolt your senses. You learn quick. She says kindly, stay a season, maybe you stay forever. You smile, though you know you wouldn't last. Not really. The endless cycles, the rigid order. It's beautiful in its own way, but suffocating too. Historians still debate whether peasants in feudal Japan were oppressed or content, whether the structure of village life brought stability or crushed individuality. Watching this family move in harmony with the land, you can almost believe both at once. When you leave the village, they bow as you go. Safe travels, traveler, the farmer calls. Remember the rice when you eat bread. You promise you will. As you walk away, the sound of the shamisen fades behind you. The path winds uphill through fields glowing gold in the afternoon sun. You pause to look back one last time. The thatched roofs, the smoke curling from chimneys, the figures bent low in the distance. It's not a grand world, not one of glory or power, but it's the world that keeps everything else alive. You turn back toward the mountains, the mud clinging to your sandals, the memory of that simple meal still warm in your chest. The road curves upward into mist, stone steps slick with moss, and the faint scent of cedar rising from the trees. You can feel the mountain breathing, cool, damp air rushing past your face, birds calling somewhere high above. The farmer's village is far behind now, replaced by the steady silence of pilgrimage. It's not long before you catch sight of a line of figures ahead. Pilgrims, white robes bright against the forest's deep green, straw hats tipped low. Some carry wooden staffs etched with mantras. Others balance small offerings, bundles of incense, tiny bells, folded paper charms. You fall in step behind them, your feet echoing softly against the stone. The leader, an old monk with a calm, lined face, glances back at you. You walk with purpose. He asks, his voice light but probing. Curiosity. You admit. He smiles faintly. That's the first step toward purpose. You follow the group higher, where the air grows thin and the trees close in. Wooden torii gates mark the sacred path, bright vermilion against the mist. Each gate feels like a doorway between worlds, one step in the realm of mortals, one step closer to something unseen. You pause at a small shrine along the way. Offerings of rice, flowers, and coins sit before a carved fox, its eyes glinting through a layer of dew. You've read about the fox spirits, kitsune, messengers of the god Inari, tricksters and protectors both. The duality feels fitting here. A bell rings softly from above. The pilgrims stop, bow, and begin to chant. The sound is low and rhythmic, like waves hitting the shore. You can't understand the words, but the feeling, peaceful, weighty, settles into your bones. Listen, the monk whispers. The mountain speaks through silence. You close your eyes and try. Wind through pine needles, the patter of rain, distant thunder. It's subtle, but you almost hear it. The slow heartbeat of something ancient. When the chanting ends, you help the pilgrims lay offerings at the main hall of a temple tucked between cliffs. The structure seems to grow out of the rock itself. Dark wood, tiled roofs, incense curling from its eaves. Inside, a single monk tends to candles before an enormous statue of Kannon, the bodhisattva of compassion. Her face is serene, her hands open. The air smells of pine smoke and age. You kneel beside the others. No one speaks. In that silence, your thoughts soften. About the samurai, the farmers, even yourself. Everyone here, it seems, is just trying to survive with dignity. The head monk approaches, robes whispering across the floor. Traveler, he says gently, the world below is loud. You came here to remember quiet. You nod, unsure if it's true but not willing to argue. He smiles as if he's heard your doubt anyway. Remember, he adds, silence is also a kind of strength. Historians still argue whether Buddhist influence in feudal Japan softened the warrior class, or simply gave them philosophical cover for discipline and death. But here, amid incense and chanting, it feels less like doctrine and more like air, everywhere, invisible, vital. Outside, the clouds part briefly, revealing the valley below. From this height, you can see everything: the rice paddies, shimmering like mirrors, the faint smoke from villages, the ribbon of road leading back to the sea. It's breathtaking and isolating. You share a simple meal with the monks: rice, miso soup, and pickled vegetables. They eat slowly, almost reverently. One of them chuckles when you finish too quickly. Your stomach lives in the city, he says. Here, we eat with the mountain. Later, you help gather firewood near a waterfall. The sound is thunderous but soothing. The monk beside you hums softly as he works. The spirits here are old, he says. Older than war, older than rice. You glance at him. Do they still listen to people? Only to those who still listen to them. He smiles. You hear the water, don't you? That's them talking. By nightfall, mist wraps around the temple like a living thing. Lanterns glow along the walkways, their reflections dancing in puddles. Inside, the monks sit in meditation. You join them, trying to mimic their posture, back straight, hands resting lightly on your knees. The silence stretches until time itself feels thin. A candle flickers beside you. You catch yourself thinking of the samurai again, how some of them trained not just with swords, but with sutras, blending death and devotion into one art. Maybe Bushido and Buddhism were never opposites at all, but two sides of the same meditation control. When the gong finally sounds, the monks rise silently and bow. You follow their lead. One of them places a string of wooden prayer beads in your palm. For protection, he says. Or maybe remembrance. You tuck it into your sleeve and step outside. The rain has stopped, and the night air feels almost new. You sleep in a small guest hut, the sound of dripping water lulling you into dreams. You dream of foxes darting between torii gates, of monks walking through mist that never clears. At dawn, you wake to the temple bell, a deep, resonant tone that seems to vibrate through your bones. You watch the monks begin their morning chores in silence, sweeping leaves, tending the fire, refilling the water basins. There's a rhythm to their life, one that doesn't depend on rank or wealth, just purpose. Before you leave, the head monk meets you at the gate. The world below hasn't changed, he says. But maybe you have. You bow deeply. Maybe. He chuckles. Then that is enough for one night's stay. As you descend the mountain, the sunlight filters through the trees in golden shafts. The forest hums with life. Cicadas, rustling branches, the faint rush of the river below. You think about everything you've seen: power, obedience, faith. And for the first time, you realize how tightly all three are woven together here. In feudal Japan, nothing exists in isolation. Even silence has a hierarchy. When you finally reach the foot of the mountain, you look back once. The temple's roof glints faintly through the clouds, like a memory refusing to fade. You breathe deeply, the prayer beads warm in your hand, and step back onto the road toward whatever comes next. By the time you reach the next town, the air feels thicker, buzzing with life in a way the mountain silence never could. You're standing at the threshold of a castle town, a place where power gathers, like thunderclouds around the seat of a daimyo, one of Japan's great feudal lords. The road widens here, flanked by rows of tidy wooden houses. Shopkeepers bow from their doorways. Children dart between fish stalls, and somewhere up ahead, a black, tiled fortress rises against the sky, like a sleeping dragon. You pass through a checkpoint, where a samurai guard inspects travelers' papers with all the warmth of a winter wind. His hand rests casually on his sword as he nods you through. You're learning by now every gesture in this world has weight. Inside the town, the rhythm changes. Merchants call out prices in sing-song voices. Drummers beat patterns to attract buyers, and the smell of grilled eel wafts through the air. The town feels alive, crowded, colorful, and oddly theatrical. A man selling paper lanterns waves you over.
Traveler!
Fine lamps for the festival tonight. His hands are stained with dye. His grin is genuine. You buy one just to see his face light up brighter than the lantern itself. The festival, he explains, honors the local daimyo's rule. Part devotion, part diplomacy. If people celebrate, he says, they forget to complain. You laugh, but his tone isn't entirely joking. Further down the street, a black lacquer palanquin passes, carried by 4 sweating porters. Inside, you glimpse of silken sleeves. A noblewoman, perhaps. Commoners step aside instantly, bowing low. You follow their lead, realizing that in this place, rank determines even how you breathe. Historians still argue whether castle towns brought opportunity or control. They centralized trade, culture, and craftsmanship, but also surveillance. Every street, every guild, every rice sack could be counted and taxed. You can almost feel the invisible threads tying everyone here to the daimyo's ledger. You stop near a craftsman's stall where a blacksmith hammers a short sword over glowing coals. Sparks leap like fireflies. He doesn't look up as he speaks. You're not from here. Just passing through. You say, your voice barely audible over the hammer's ring. Everyone says that. He plunges the blade into water with a hiss. Steam coils upward. But this place keeps people, one way or another. You thank him and move on, unsure if he meant it as warning or prophecy. The castle looms closer now. Massive stone foundations, curved eaves, watchtowers bristling with archers. A moat encircles it, calm as glass. You stop on the bridge to watch a carp break the surface, scattering ripples that fade almost instantly. Inside the walls, the air shifts again, quieter, tense. Samurai stand guard at every corner, their armor polished to mirror shine. You've somehow wandered into the administrative heart of the domain. A scribe hurries past carrying scrolls. Another kneels to copy names into a register. The bureaucracy of feudal Japan is alive and well. A servant bows deeply, mistaking you for someone of mild importance, and offers tea. You take it, partly from thirst, partly from disbelief that you've made it this far without being arrested. As you sip, you overhear 2 retainers discussing their lord in hushed tones. The daimyo worries about Kyoto again. One whispers. The shogun's taxes grow heavier. The other snorts. When does he not worry? Politics is a second sword. Cuts just as deep. You set down the cup carefully. So even up here, among the powerful, anxiety rules. Everyone answers to someone higher, even the lords. In the courtyard, you stumble upon a group of samurai practicing Aido, the art of drawing the sword in a single fluid motion. Each movement is poetry, a blend of meditation and lethality. You watch, hypnotized, until one of them nods to you. "Traveler," he says, wiping his blade. "Do you know why we draw slow and strike fast?" You shake your head. Because life does the same. He smiles faintly and sheaths the sword. The sound, steel sliding against wood, is soft, final. You leave the castle grounds before someone realizes you don't belong. Outside the gates, the town feels louder, freer. By dusk, the festival begins. Lanterns glow like floating stars, drums beat in slow waves, and laughter spills into the streets. You drift through it all, the rhythm infectious. Dancers in bright yukata whirl to the sound of flutes, their sleeves like petals in motion. A group of children tug at your sleeve, giggling. They hand you a wooden mask, painted red, with a fox's grin. You slip it on, and suddenly, you're part of the crowd, just another face in the festival's dream. You follow the sound of music to a riverside stage, where performers reenact a famous battle. Paper armor, bamboo spears, exaggerated death throes. The audience cheers every swing. It's equal parts history and theater, tragedy softened into spectacle. A man beside you leans in, half drunk, whispering, "Real samurai don't dance. But sometimes we make them." He laughs and stumbles away. Later, fireworks burst above the castle, white, gold, red, reflected in the dark water below. The crowd gasps in unison, and for a moment, even the samurai at the gates glance upward, faces lit with fleeting wonder. You realize something then, in this rigid world of duty and order. Festivals are rebellion disguised as loyalty. A night where everyone, peasant, craftsman, and warrior, can forget the hierarchy and just be human. When the last spark fades, you wander through the emptying streets. Drums quiet, lanterns dim, laughter turns to whispers. The air smells faintly of ash and sake. You find a quiet spot by the moat and sit, feet dangling over the edge. The reflection of the castle ripples beneath you, distorted but beautiful. You think of all the lives circling that fortress. Merchants counting coins, samurai reciting poems, servants sweeping floors before dawn. Each trapped in their own orbit, yet somehow, the whole thing works. Historians still debate whether the daimyo system unified Japan or suffocated it under layers of control. But sitting here, watching the lanterns drift on the water, you sense both truths are right. Order and suffocation, beauty and fear. They coexist like twin reflections. A firefly lands on your sleeve. Its light pulses softly, then fades. You smile. Maybe that's the lesson tonight. Even in the shadow of power, something small can still glow. You wake to the sound of waves. The sea at last. After days of dusty roads and the thick air of castle towns, the coastline feels like another planet. Salt on your lips, wind cutting through your clothes, gulls wheeling overhead. The morning sun paints the horizon gold. And for the first time in weeks, you can see the edge of Japan stretching into the endless blue. Down below, a cluster of fishing boats rocks gently in the harbor. Men shout to each other in the sing. Song rhythm of routine, pulling ropes, checking nets, tying knots that have been passed down through generations. You wander closer, drawn by the smell of brine and grilled squid drifting from a nearby stall. A fisherman waves you over, his face creased from sun and sea. You look lost, he says, grinning. Or maybe just hungry. You laugh, both. He hands you a skewer of roasted mackerel, the skin crisp and glistening. Then you work. You hesitate, unsure if he's joking. He isn't. Moments later, You're hauling nets beside him, your hands burning from the rope. The sea is heavy, alive, tugging back like it resents being disturbed. When you finally drag the net onto the sand, it's glittering with silver. Dozens of fish flapping wildly, reflecting sunlight like coins. The fisherman slaps your back, laughing. Good catch, traveler. The ocean respects effort. You grin, panting. Does it always? He shrugs. When it feels generous. Life here runs by a rhythm older than feudal order. The samurai's code means nothing to the tide. The ocean bows to no one, not daimyo, not emperor, only to the moon. Still, the fishermen pay their taxes in dried fish and labor. Their world might seem free, but the nets of duty reach far inland. Historians still argue whether Japan's coastal communities thrived because of their isolation or suffered under it. You can see both truths in the salt lines etched on the fishermen's faces. The afternoon heat grows thick, and the sea glimmers like molten glass. Women sit by the shore, weaving ropes and repairing nets with deft, practiced hands. Children chase crabs through the shallows, their laughter blending with the core of gulls. You notice one woman dipping her hair in seawater before tying it up. She catches your curious look and smiles. Keeps it clean, she says. Salt kills bad spirits and lice. You laugh, and she grins wider. Don't mock me. The sea has more medicine than any temple. There's wisdom in her tone. You remember hearing stories of the ama, Japan's female free divers, who gather pearls, seaweed, and abalone from the depths. They work without air tanks, plunging into freezing water on a single breath. It's said their lungs are like bellows, their courage like iron. You ask if any live nearby. The woman points to a rocky outcrop down the coast. Go there at dusk. You'll hear them before you see them. Curiosity wins. As the sun dips low, you follow her directions. The rocks rise jagged from the surf, dark and wet. Then, faintly you hear it, a sharp whistle cutting through the wind, followed by a splash. There, figures in white, surfacing from the waves like ghosts. The ama. You crouch behind a boulder, mesmerized. Their white garments cling to their skin, their hair slick against their faces. Each dive is ritual. Breath in, dive deep, vanish into shadow. When they resurface, they whistle to release carbon dioxide, a sound eerie and beautiful at once. One notices you watching. Instead of scolding, she waves. You wave back awkwardly, earning a laugh before she plunges under again. When they finally return to shore, you help carry baskets of seaweed and shells. The oldest diver studies you with amusement. City hands, she says. But good spirit. Thank you, you reply, bowing slightly. Spirit is all that keeps us alive down there, she says, pointing toward the dark sea. The ocean doesn't care about rank. It takes everyone the same. Her words echo something you've heard before. On the road, in the mountains, from monks and farmers alike. Here, survival is the only hierarchy. The divers build a small fire and begin sorting their catch. The air smells of salt and smoke. One of them offers you a shell filled with roasted seaweed and bits of abalone. You taste it, chewy, briny, oddly sweet. Good, she asks. Very. You manage between bites. They laugh softly, and for a moment, you feel like part of the crew. The night deepens. A crescent moon hangs above the waves, silver light rippling across the tide. The divers pack their tools and begin a small chant, thanking the sea for its gifts. You recognize the rhythm, similar to the monks' chants, but wilder, freer. Do you ever fear it? You ask quietly. One of the younger women glances at you. Every time, she says simply. That's how we know we're still alive. Later, you walk along the shore, your feet sinking into cool sand. The lanterns of fishing boats bob in the distance, like constellations drifting across the water. Somewhere out there, men and women fight sleep to haul in tomorrow's meal. Historians still debate how much of Japan's soul comes from the land and how much from the sea. Standing here, you feel the pull of both. The earth's stability, the water's restlessness. You stop near a shrine built from driftwood, its small altar guarded by shells and coral. Someone's left offerings rice, sake, and a carved wooden fish. You bow instinctively. The wind picks up, carrying the faint scent of salt and something floral, maybe memory itself. You whisper a quiet, "Thank." You unsure to whom you're speaking. The waves lap close to your feet, cold and steady. You realize that in this world, even the smallest act, mending a net, lighting a lantern, bowing to the sea, is both survival and prayer. Tomorrow, you'll head inland again, toward the merchants and courtiers, the scholars and scribes. But tonight, under the endless breath of the tide, you finally feel the rhythm of Japan. Not just feudal, not just historical, but human. The sea keeps its secrets. You're lucky it shared this one. Morning creeps in through paper walls again. But this time, it's not a hut or a peasant's cottage. You wake inside a machiya, a narrow, 2-story wooden townhouse tucked deep inside Kyoto's bustling merchant district. The air smells of cedar, roasted soybeans, and ink. Outside, someone's already sweeping the street. The rhythmic scrape of straw broom against stone echoing through the alley like a slow metronome. You stretch. The futon beneath you is thin but soft, the pillow filled with buckwheat husks. Sunlight filters through the shoji, painting your hands in honey, colored squares. It's quiet, but beneath that quiet hums a pulse. Commerce. Somewhere nearby, coins are clinking, scales are tipping, bargains are whispered. You step outside. The street is alive. Shopkeepers call to customers. Porters heave barrels of sake on their shoulders. An apprentice rushes past, carrying a tray of lacquer boxes, apologizing with a hurried bow. The smell of grilled eel floats in from a nearby stall, mingling with the sharper scent of ink and freshly planed wood. You've stumbled into the beating heart of Japan's rising merchant class. The Chunin, townspeople who built their fortunes not on swords, but on cleverness, persistence, and the unspoken rule of the market: never waste a moment. A man in a cotton robe greets you from the doorway of his shop. "Traveler, you look like someone who appreciates fine paper," he says with a knowing grin. His fingers are stained black from ink. Inside, shelves are stacked with scrolls, ledgers, and brushes. "I'm new to the trade," you reply cautiously. He chuckles. "Aren't we all? Come, let me show you something." He unfurls a fresh sheet of handmade washi, thin as air, yet strong as cloth. Made from mulberry bark, he explains, his tone equal parts pride and salesmanship. "It'll outlive us both, if kept dry. Even the shogun's clerks buy from me." You run your hand along the paper's edge. Smooth, cool, perfect. "Trade, my friend," he says, "is the new battlefield. The samurai still fight for honor, but he taps the counter. "We fight for silver." You smile. "And who usually wins?" He laughs. "Depends who eats better that night." Outside, the streets pulse with motion. You pass a tea house, its curtains fluttering. Inside, men in fine robes sip from porcelain cups, discussing poetry and profit in equal measure. Beyond that, a kimono shop displays bolts of silk dyed in deep indigo and crimson. A young woman unfurls a pattern of cranes mid-flight. Her eyes shine with quiet ambition. Historians still argue whether these merchants were Japan's silent revolutionaries or merely opportunists beneath samurai oversight. The truth likely floats somewhere in between, hidden like gold coins stitched into a kimono's hem. Down the lane, a man hammers copper into shape. Clanging, rhythmic, hypnotic. You stop to watch. "Making tea kettles," he says proudly. "Good ones sing when they boil." He hands you a half-finished piece, still warm from the forge. You work all day. You ask, day, night, whatever the market needs. "Money doesn't sleep," he winks. "But I do." After a bottle of sake, the air grows thicker as afternoon arrives. Crowds swell, voices rise. A procession of merchants passes, carrying banners embroidered with the crest of Kyoto's Guild of Artisans. They march not in armor, but in perfect coordination, their tools gleaming like weapons of a subtler war. At the head walks a woman in her 40s, posture straight as a blade. Guild leader, someone whispers beside you, owns half the dye shops in town. You watch her closely, the calm authority, the quiet command. She notices your gaze and nods once, a silent acknowledgement between travelers of different kinds. You wander toward the back streets, where the noise softens into the rustle of rice paper doors and the smell of simmering miso. There, you find a small print shop. The air is thick with ink and ambition. Inside, workers carve wooden blocks, mirrors of reversed words and images. Sheets of washi lie drying on bamboo racks. A young printer grins at you through his ink-streaked face. "Ever seen a book born?" he asks, holding up a freshly printed page. "We're making poems now, but next month, maybe plays." You look closer. The lines shimmer with black characters, alive with rhythm, even if you can't read them. You ask, "Scholars, monks, sometimes bored samurai?" He shrugs. "We just make them real." Printing, you realize, is quietly reshaping Japan. Knowledge spreads like wildfire, cheaply, quickly, uncontrollably. The Tokugawa shogunate keeps one cautious eye on it, trying to censor anything too radical. But words are slippery things. They tend to escape their cages. A scroll on the wall reads, "Truth flows like ink. It stains everything it touches." You think of that as you step back into the sun. The merchant's world is full of contradictions. Rigid status on one hand, boundless creativity on the other. By dusk, the paper seller you met earlier invites you for tea. His wife prepares sencha, pouring it with quiet grace. The small tatami room glows in lantern light, every object placed just so, neither wasteful nor excessive. "You seem to notice everything," she says softly. You smile. "I'm trying to survive." "Then notice the small things," she replies. "They're what keep us alive." She gestures toward the tea's steam. "See that? The heat's invisible, but it's there. That's how you must live, lightly, unseen, steady." Her words settle like the scent of green tea. Subtle but enduring. Later, as lanterns flicker to life across the street, a troupe of street performers sets up. A rakugo storyteller, 2 shamisen players, and a child dancing with a paper fan. The audience gathers, merchants dropping coins into a straw basket. The storyteller begins a tale of a clever fox who tricks a greedy samurai into giving away his gold. The crowd laughs softly, even the guards chuckle. It's harmless fun, but underneath, you feel the quiet satire. The people here have found a way to speak truth safely, through laughter, rhythm, and clever disguise. You find yourself smiling. The world of the merchant is exhausting but alive, a delicate balance between duty and freedom, silence and wit. As the last lanterns dim, you return to your futon in the narrow townhouse. The streets are nearly empty now, the night breeze carrying faint music, and the smell of soy smoke. You close your eyes and hear the distant ocean again, the heartbeat of the land. The sea gave you humility, but this city gives you cunning. You've learned that survival here isn't about strength. It's about reading the flow, like a merchant watching market tides. Historians still debate whether the Chu-nen truly changed Japan's destiny or merely kept it running between wars. But as you drift toward sleep, lulled by the faint scrape of someone sweeping the night's dust from the road, you suspect the merchants already know the answer. The morning fog clings low over Kyoto, soft and silver, turning rooftops into islands floating in mist. You wake before dawn this time, habit, maybe, or the quiet pull of curiosity. Somewhere nearby, a temple bell tolls 6 slow notes, deep as the earth's breath. You decide to follow the sound. The streets are still half asleep. A stray cat darts across the alley. A shopkeeper yawns as he lifts his shutters. You pass under wooden gates into a different world entirely. The temple grounds. Mossy stone lanterns line the path, slick with dew. Incense drifts from the main hall, thick and sweet, and a monk in saffron robes sweeps the steps in slow, meditative arcs. He doesn't look up as you approach. "You're early," he says, voice calm, without surprise. "Couldn't sleep," you reply. He smiles faintly. "Good." The restless often find what the rested overlook. You follow him into the temple courtyard, where a group of monks chant in perfect unison. The rhythm vibrates in your chest. Low, steady, like waves made of sound. You kneel awkwardly at the edge, trying to match your breathing to theirs. The world outside feels distant, as though someone's drawn a paper screen between you and time itself. After the prayer, the monk offers you a bowl of rice gruel and pickled plum. "Breakfast," he says simply. You thank him. The meal is bland but warm, the kind of food that reminds you life doesn't always need seasoning. "You travel?" he asks between sips. "I do. Or maybe I drift," you admit. He nods. Drifting is travel without destination. Sometimes that's wiser. The two of you walk through the temple gardens, miniature worlds carved from stone and sand. Raked gravel ripples like frozen water. Tiny pine trees bend, as if in eternal bow. You see that? He gestures toward the sand patterns. They look like waves, but they never move. The lesson is balance. To see motion in stillness. You pause, watching sunlight creep across the surface. "I think I understand," you say quietly. He chuckles. You don't, but you will. The temple, he explains, belongs to the Zen sect, a school that values simplicity, silence, and direct experience over doctrine. It arrived from China centuries ago, carried by monks who believed enlightenment wasn't something to be studied, but realized. Like noticing your reflection in still water, historians still argue whether Zen shaped Japan or Japan shaped Zen, the monk says. But I think they shaped each other, like two stones rubbing smooth. His words stay with you as you move deeper into the temple complex. A young apprentice is kneeling before a scroll, copying calligraphy strokes again and again. Sweat beads on his forehead. His master watches quietly, correcting him only when the brush trembles. Why do they write the same thing hundreds of times? You ask. To lose themselves, the monk says. The hand learns what the heart forgets. You try it yourself later, under supervision. The brush feels alive in your hand, slippery with ink. The characters flow unevenly. Awkward, hesitant. The monk watches, then nods approvingly. Clumsy, he says. Perfect. You laugh despite yourself. That's the first time someone's called my mistakes perfect. He smiles. Zen has room for both failure and tea. And indeed, soon you're led to the chashitsu, the tea house. It's small, barely larger than a shed, yet every object feels deliberate. The bamboo ladle, the iron kettle, the tatami mat precisely measured. The tea master bows and begins the ritual. Every motion is slow, exact, rhythmic. You realize this isn't just about drinking tea. It's about noticing the act of noticing. When she finally pours your cup, she says softly, "Tea is a moment you can drink." You sip. It's bitter, grassy, somehow soothing. Outside, a sparrow lands on the bamboo fence. For a few seconds, everything, the bird, the steam, your breath, aligns into one clear thought piece. Then the moment passes, as all moments do. Later, you help the monks fetch water from a nearby spring. The bucket handle bites your palms, and the path is steep, but no one complains. They move with calm efficiency, as if carrying water is a kind of prayer. You ask, doesn't it get tiring, living like this every day? A young monk smiles. Only when we think about tomorrow. He glances at you. And you. Why do you travel? You consider your answer. To understand what it means to be alive here. He nods slowly. Then stop trying to understand. Just be. It sounds like a riddle, but you sense the truth in it. That evening, the monks light candles in tall iron holders. The glow flickers against ancient wood beams, turning the hall into a living painting. The chanting begins again. Low, steady, infinite. You close your eyes. A small bell chimes once. Something inside you loosens. The constant awareness of danger, of etiquette, of survival, all fade. For a few minutes, you simply exist. The sound of the bell, the scent of incense, the quiet rustle of robes, all blend into a kind of tranquil fog. When you open your eyes, the monk who first greeted you stands beside you. "See," he says. You are still for a moment. You nod. "I think I needed that." He smiles. Everyone does. Even the shogun, though he won't admit it. You both laugh softly. Outside, the fog has lifted. The city below twinkles like a reflection of the night sky. Somewhere in that maze of light and wood, merchants haggle, samurai patrol, lovers whisper. But up here, the world feels lighter, quieter, less urgent. Before you leave, the monk gives you a small charm carved from sandalwood. "For the road," he says. "It won't protect you from harm, but it will remind you to breathe." You bow deeply. As you walk down the temple steps, lantern light fading behind you, you realize that survival in feudal Japan isn't just about food or safety. It's about keeping your mind intact amid chaos. The warriors train their bodies. The farmers endure the seasons, but the monks, they train silence. And perhaps that's the hardest discipline of all. The temple's calm still hums in your bones as you descend into the bustle of Kyoto again. The peace fades quickly, like mist burned away by sunlight. The city has no patience for stillness. The clatter of carts, the shout of vendors, and the rhythmic clap of gaiter sandals against cobblestones rush in around you. Today, you decide to follow a different kind of trail. Not monks or merchants this time, but the ink-stained minds behind Japan's shifting culture, the artists, poets, and storytellers. You've heard whispers of salons where words flow faster than sake, where ideas are painted, sung, and argued over until the candles melt to stubs. You find one hidden behind a curtain of wisteria vines. A tea house that's seen better centuries. A faint melody leaks through its paper walls, plucked shamisen, the gentle tap of a fan, soft laughter. Inside, the air glows gold with lamplight and tobacco smoke. A man greets you before you can speak, robes loose, hair uncombed, a writing brush tucked behind his ear. "A traveler. Perfect. We're fresh out of new eyes to see the world with." He leads you to a low table scattered with scrolls and inkstones. "Sit, sit. I'm Bashu's admirer, though he'd disown me if he knew how I rhyme." He chuckles at his own joke, pouring you sake before you can refuse. You sip cautiously. It's warm, sweet, and far too inviting. The room is a college of humanity, a painter silently sketching the scene with deliberate strokes, a geisha tuning her shamisen, a scholar scribbling notes between bites of pickled daikon. Someone is arguing about metaphors, someone else is asleep in the corner. "Here," your host says, handing you a small sheet of paper. "Write a haiku." Everyone does on their first night. You hesitate. "I'm not a poet." "Perfect," he says. Neither was Bash at first. You think for a moment, the sake loosening your nerves. The candlelight flickers. You scribble 3 lines. Cold rice and moonlight. Someone hums an old story. Paper dreams of ink. He reads it aloud, nodding approvingly. "You've got the right disease," he says. "You'll start seeing poetry in the laundry soon." The room bursts into laughter. Historians still argue whether haiku emerged from refined Zen simplicity or from drunken poets too tired for long verses. Probably both. But as you listen to them recite, you understand why it survived. It's small enough to hold a world. Later, a painter unrolls his newest work. A landscape of Mount Fuji seen from a fisherman's boat, waves curling like calligraphy strokes. The world doesn't need to be realistic. He mutters, just honest. He dips his brush again. See how the mountain watches the sea. That's loneliness. The geisha hums softly beside him, her voice thin and silvery, like moonlight turned sound. She sings of love letters burned before being read, of cherry blossoms blooming just to fall. Everyone listens, eyes half closed. Even the rowdy poet quiets down. When she finishes, there's a moment of stillness. Then applause, gentle and sincere. Art. Someone murmurs, it's the only rebellion allowed here. You look around. Every wall, every scroll, every tune is a quiet defiance against a rigid world. The samurai enforce order, the shogun dictates silence. But these people, the poets, the painters, the performers, they slip through the cracks, smuggling emotion where law forbids it. A man across the room begins sketching you, his brush quick and sure. You have the face of someone who doesn't belong, he says without looking up. That's good. Outsiders see what insiders forget. You grin. And what do I see? He finishes the last stroke and turns the paper towards you. It's rough but uncanny. Your likeness, weary but alert. Eyes half curious, half cautious. You see the space between fear and wonder, he says. That's where art lives. As night deepens, the tea house becomes its own universe. Smoke curling upward, laughter spiraling sideways, ink drying into permanence. Outside, rain begins to fall, soft and rhythmic. Someone opens the window just enough to let the scent of wet earth in. A woman nearby starts reciting a poem by Izumi Shikibu, her voice almost a whisper. If I should live long, then perhaps the present days will be dear to me, as once my own past sorrow seemed somehow sweet to me. Her tone carries something between longing and peace. You realize she's reciting from memory, not to impress, but to remember. When the rain slows, your poet, host leans back and sighs. You know, he says, we live at the mercy of the pen. The wrong word can get you executed, but the right one might outlive empires. You nod, thinking of monks' quiet patience and merchants' clever tongues. Here, language is another kind of sword, sharper, quieter, eternal. By midnight, the sake's gone. The painters have dozed off. The singer is packing her instrument. The poet stretches and says, you'll leave soon, won't you? I will. He nods. Good. Don't stay too long anywhere. Stillness breeds comfort. Comfort breeds dullness. He pauses, then smiles. But when you write about this, make us sound smarter than we were. You laugh. Deal. He waves lazily as you step out into the damp street. The air is cold and sweet. Lantern light trembles on puddles. The rain has polished the world to a mirror sheen. As you walk back toward the inn, you pass walls painted with old advertisements, calligraphy fading, paper peeling. You trace one with your fingers. Ink and time, both fleeting, both permanent in their own way. Historians still debate whether Japan's Edo period art scene was escapism or quiet protest. But to you, it feels like something simpler, an act of staying human when everything else demands obedience. You turn one last corner and see the faint glow of dawn washing over the tiled rooftops. Somewhere behind you, a poet is probably still arguing with a painter about whether mountains dream. And for once, you don't mind not knowing the answer. By the time the poet's songs fade from memory, you've traded Kyoto's glittering art world for a quieter path winding through mist-soaked valleys. The air grows colder, the hills steeper, villages thin out, until all that remains are the sounds of cicadas and the rustle of bamboo. You're heading north, toward Edo's outskirts, where whispers of power travel slower but echo longer. The road is treacherous, slick stones, sudden rain, and the occasional wary stare from peasants who mistake you for a tax collector. By dusk, you find shelter in a roadside honjin, a government, run-in for travelers of some standing. You're not exactly of standing, but a wary look and a coin work wonders. Inside, the air smells of cedar smoke and miso soup. A few merchants huddle near the hearth, their faces lit by the orange glow of firelight. Across the room sits a man you recognize by posture alone, rigid, formal, motionless. A samurai. He notices your gaze and nods once. It's not a greeting, it's a warning. You lower your eyes and settle near the fire. The innkeeper serves you a small bowl of noodles and a cup of weak tea. It's enough. You're halfway through eating when the samurai speaks. You travel alone. You hesitate. For now. He studies you quietly. Strange time for wanderers. Bandits on the teakhead. Officials everywhere. And yet, here you are. I'm just passing through. Everyone says that, he replies, sipping his tea. There's a heavy silence before he adds, be careful. This land smiles with one face and bites with another. You nod, unsure whether to thank him or run. He chuckles softly, almost kindly. Don't look so tense. I've bitten no one in years. You allow yourself a small laugh, and the tension dissolves like steam from the kettle. Later that night, while others snore around you, you hear the samurai humming softly, an old war song. The kind you've heard peasants hum while sharpening tools, turning battle into memory. You wonder how many lives he's lived since the wars ended, how many he's tried to forget. At dawn, he's gone. But where he sat, you find something folded carefully. A strip of paper with a haiku written in delicate brushwork. A blade without war rusts slower than a heart can. Both dull all the same. You slip it into your sleeve. Maybe as a warning. Maybe as a gift. The next few days, the land opens up. Rice fields rippling in green waves, dotted with white cranes. Farmers bow as you pass, not out of respect but habit. You realize that despite centuries of hierarchy, what truly binds Japan together isn't power, but patience. Everyone here, peasant, merchant, monk, or lord, moves to the same slow rhythm of endurance. In one village, you help gather rice before the storm. The stalks cut into your palms, the air thickens with humidity. The farmers laugh when you complain. It's the gods asking for their share of sweat, one says. You grin. Do they take rice too? They take everything, he answers. Especially patience. The rain comes suddenly, drenching everyone. No one runs. Instead, they laugh louder, letting the sky wash over them. For a moment, it feels like joy, pure and undeserved. Later, under the eaves of a storage shed, the oldest farmer lights a pipe and tells stories. Once, this land was full of ash and war. Now it's just mud and work. Maybe that's peace. You ask what he means. He shrugs. Peace is when no one remembers how to fight. Historians still argue whether the Edo period's peace was genuine harmony or just exhaustion dressed as order. Listening to this man, you think maybe it doesn't matter. For him, peace is enough rice to eat and enough rain to curse. That night, you share a meal of roasted sweet potatoes and talk about nothing. Crops, festivals, the mischief of fox spirits. When you finally lie down, your body aches but your mind feels strangely light. The next morning, you continue north, following the river toward Edo. The road grows busier. Pilgrims, traders, beggars, samurai in small retinues. Everyone moving, yet no one rushing. You stop at a roadside shrine where travelers leave offerings coins. Paper cranes, sometimes hairpins. A monk sits nearby, reciting sutras for the dead. You ask if it's for someone specific. He smiles faintly. For everyone passing through. You drop a coin into the wooden box. Even for the living. He nods. Especially for them. You sit for a moment, listening to the water's steady rhythm. The monk continues his chant, low and soothing, like the sea breathing in slow motion. By the time you reach Edo's outskirts, the world changes again. The horizon blooms with rooftops, smoke, and the faint sound of drums. The air smells of grilled eel and ambition. Edo, the largest city on earth. a maze of woods, sweat, and dreams. You cross a bridge into the city, and everything hits at once: the crush of people, the laughter spilling from teahouses, the scent of rain damp tatami. Vendors shout from every direction. You pass a street lined with puppet theatres, another packed with booksellers. The energy is dizzying, electric, alive. For the first time in weeks, you feel overwhelmed. The mountains were silent, the temples meditative. But here the world roars. You stop beside a food stall selling grilled rice balls. The cook grins, flipping one expertly. First time in Edo. You nod. He laughs. You'll either love it or get lost. Or both. Isn't that the same thing? You ask. He winks. Exactly. You bite into the rice ball. It's simple, crispy, smoky, perfect. Around you, the crowd flows like a river that never rests. Somewhere within that current, stories are being born, traded, forgotten, and reborn again. You realize you've reached the heart of feudal Japan, not its castles or fields, but its streets. The beating, breathing chaos where the old world and the new collide. The city hums, alive and eternal, and you take your first real breath in Edo. Morning light spills across Edo's endless rooftops like liquid gold. You wake to the sound of merchants setting up their stalls. Wooden carts creaking. Coins clinking, a chorus of shouts that blend into something almost musical. You've made it to the city's heart, but surviving here might be trickier than anywhere else in Japan. You stretch your legs and look around. The alley is narrow, barely wide enough for two people to pass. Laundry flutters between houses. A cat darts across your feet, vanishing under a rice barrel. Somewhere nearby, someone is frying fish for breakfast. You wander toward the main street, drawn by the energy. Edo is a living organism. Every block a new rhythm. Every face a story. Samurai stride past, their swords polished to mirror brightness. Merchants bow just enough to be polite, not enough to show submission. Peasants haul goods from the countryside, sweat gleaming on their backs. Somewhere, a street performer juggles knives, and a crowd roars with laughter. You grab a cup of a mosaic, sweet fermented rice drink, from an old woman's stand. It's warm, slightly tangy. She peers up at you. You're not from here, are you? You smile. Is it that obvious? She chuckles. Everyone's from somewhere else. Edo just makes us forget it. You thank her and move on, feeling the city's pulse through the soles of your feet. It's intoxicating, like being inside a giant festival that never quite ends. But beneath the laughter, there's something else: tension. The shogun's men patrol the main roads, eyes sharp for trouble. Everyone bows a little deeper when they pass. Even the stray dogs go silent. You remember what the samurai at the inn said. This land smiles with one face and bites with another. Edo, it seems, has sharper teeth than most. Still, you can't help but marvel. You pass a bookshop, its shelves crammed with ukiyo-e prints, woodblock depictions of floating worlds, kabuki actors, courtesans, sumo wrestlers. One print catches your eye. A night scene of a woman gazing out at the Sumida River, her reflection shimmering in the water. The title reads, Beauty and Loneliness Under the Moon. The shopkeeper notices your interest. That one's by Hokusai, he says proudly. They say he paints the sound of wind. You smile. Can someone paint sound? He shrugs. In Edo, anything can be sold if it looks real enough. There's truth in that. Edo thrives on illusion, on art, performance, pretense. You wander into the Yoshiwara district, where the lines between dream and deception blur even further. Lanterns glow like captured stars, and laughter spills from behind paper walls. Courtesans glide through the crowd, their silk robes whispering secrets with every step. One of them, her hair adorned with a fan of golden pins, glances at you and smiles faintly. Careful, traveler, she says, her voice smooth as sake. In Yoshiwara, even the moon is rented. You laugh, but she's not joking. Everything here costs something. money, time, or heart. You spend an hour just wandering the pleasure district, taking in the surreal beauty of it all, the painted fans, the scent of incense, the haunting notes of a shamisen drifting through open windows. The Yoshiwara is both heaven and trap. Historians still argue whether it empowered women through art and influence, or trapped them in gilded cages. Walking these streets, you suspect it was both. As evening falls, you find yourself by the Sumida River. Fireflies flicker over the water, and paper lanterns float downstream, tiny stars carried by the current. Beside you, a fisherman hums a tune as he mends his net. Beautiful night, you say. He nods without looking up. The river remembers everything, he murmurs. Even the things we try to forget. There's wisdom in that. Edo is built on layers. Earthquake debris, burned wood, forgotten dreams. Beneath the glittering surface lies the memory of all that came before. The fisherman gestures with his chin toward the far bank. See that hill? Used to be graves there before they built new homes. This city grows like bamboo, fast and over old roots. You watch the lights flicker on in the distance and think of all the people packed into those narrow houses, dreaming of better lives. Edo might be grand, but it's also fragile. A matchstick forest waiting for one careless flame. That night, you rent a small room in a tenement house. The walls are thin. You can hear your neighbors' conversations, laughter, the crying of a baby. It feels oddly comforting, like sleeping inside the heartbeat of humanity itself. In the morning, you follow the crowd toward Nihonbashi Bridge, the symbolic center of Japan. Everything begins here, all distances measured from this single point. Merchants shout over each other, hawking silk, pottery, dried fish. You pause to admire a lacquerware vendor's display when a man beside you whispers, "Watch your purse." Too late. You turn, catching only a flash of movement. A boy darting through the crowd. Instinct kicks in. You chase him through alleys that twist like serpents. The city becomes a maze of wooden fences, laundry lines, and startled chickens. Finally, you corner him behind a tea shop. He's panting, maybe 12 years old, clutching your coin pouch like a lifeline. You catch your breath. "You're quick," you say. He looks terrified. "I'm sorry. My mother's sick." You study him for a moment. The lie is too practiced. But the fear, that's real. You take back your pouch and toss him a single coin. "For her medicine," you say softly. "But next time, earn it." He stares, stunned, then bows so low his forehead touches the dirt. "Thank you, Summer," you smile. "I'm no Summer. Just another fool trying to survive Edo." He grins, vanishes down the alley like smoke, and you can't help but laugh. The city might devour people, but it never forgets to entertain. Later, as you walk past a street storyteller performing for a small crowd, you pause to listen. He's recounting a tale of a trickster fox who fooled a samurai by pretending to be his shadow. The audience laughs at every twist. When he finishes, he bows deeply, his eyes twinkling. "In Edo, my friends," he says, "oven shadows must pay rent." You drop a coin in his bowl and move on, smiling. The story lingers in your mind. Edo, too, feels like a trickster, shimmering between illusion and truth, never showing its full face. As the sun sets over the rooftops, the city glows like a lantern. The day's noise softens into a low murmur, and for the first time, you feel a strange affection for this chaotic, exhausting, magnificent place. Maybe you wouldn't last a day in feudal Japan, but somehow, you've lasted this long. Dawn in Edo feels different now. You're no longer the wide-eyed traveler who first stumbled through its crowded streets. You know where to find the best rice porridge, which bridges flood after heavy rain, which guards accept small bribes to look the other way. The city hasn't tamed you, but it's taught you how to move with its pulse, not against it. You step outside your tiny rented room and breathe in the morning air. Smoke rises from chimneys, the smell of charcoal and soy sauce mingling into something that somehow smells like comfort. A fishmonger calls out today's catch. Somewhere, a rooster crows, then immediately regrets it as a merchant throws a sandal in its direction. Edo mornings are never quiet, but somehow, they feel alive in a way few other places do. You make your way toward a temple district near Yuno. It's said the monks there have the calmest hearts and the best sake. Both worth investigating. On the way, you pass a group of women drawing water from a well, gossiping between bucket pulls. Did you hear? One whispers. The shogun's inspectors are back. Taxes again. You grin to yourself. Some things, it seems, never change, whether in medieval Japan or modern life. At the temple gate, incense curls through the air. The abbot greets you with a nod. "Traveler," he says. You carry the look of someone who's seen too much and eaten too little. "Probably both," you reply. He laughs quietly and invites you to join a meditation session. You kneel among farmers, merchants, and one very fidgety samurai, and try to clear your mind. But thoughts keep sneaking in. Of the road you've traveled, the people you've met, the strange poetry of survival in this ancient world. After the meditation, the abbot offers tea. "What is it you seek?" he asks, eyes half closed. You think for a moment. Understanding. Maybe. He pours another cup. Then stop looking for it. Understanding comes to those too tired to ask any more. You chuckle. That sounds suspiciously lazy. He smiles. Wisdom often is. You leave the temple lighter than you entered. The path down the hill overlooks the city. Endless roofs shimmering under the rising sun. It's easy to forget how vast Edo is until you see it from above, an ocean of wood and smoke and restless dreams. As you descend, you pass a group of laborers rebuilding a wall. One of them whistles an old tune you recognize, a marching song from the Warring States era. You pause, curious. That's an old one. He wipes his brow. My grandfather sang it. Said it kept rhythm when swinging a sword. Works just as well for swinging a hammer. You nod, feeling the weight of that lineage. So much of Japan's peace, you realize, is built on the muscles and memories of men who used to fight. Historians still argue whether Edo's peace was a golden age of stability or a long, quiet suffocation. But standing here, watching workers laugh under the morning sun, it feels like the former. Maybe peace doesn't need to be exciting, it just needs to hold. By afternoon, you wander through the market district near Asakusa. The crowd thickens. Performers juggle, puppeteers act out tales of demons and lovers, and vendors shout for attention. You pause to watch a calligrapher writing poems for tips. His brush dances effortlessly, each stroke alive with energy. You ask what he's writing. He smiles. A poem about impermanence. Everything ends, but ink remembers. You tilt your head. Even me? He nods. Especially you. Travelers are living poems. They just don't know it. You drop a coin in his bowl, and he slides a slip of paper toward you. It reads, "The traveler leaves. The wind folds his name away. Only dust remains." You tuck it beside the haiku you received from the samurai. 2 fragments of lives. One from the road, one from the city. Together, they tell your story more truthfully than words ever could. As evening falls, you find yourself walking toward Edo Castle. The outer moat glimmers under the setting sun, and guards stand motionless at every gate. You can't get close, of course. Commoners aren't allowed near, but you stop by the stone bridge, watching the reflections ripple in the water. Somewhere beyond those walls, the shogun sits surrounded by silence and ceremony, ruling an empire of order built on invisible threads. You wonder if even he feels trapped by the beauty of his own design. A passing scholar notices your gaze. "Impressive, isn't it?" he says. "All this power, balanced on a reed." You smile. "You mean the shogunate?" He shakes his head. No. The illusion that it never ends. You think about that as you walk back through the city's narrow lanes. Lanterns glow in doorways. Children chase fireflies. From an open window, someone plays a melancholy tune on the shamisen. It hits you then. How quickly life moves here. A city constantly building, burning, and rebuilding itself, like a heartbeat that refuses to stop. Every street corner is both ancient and new. Every face a thread in a story too big to see all at once. You stop at a small tea house before heading home. The owner recognizes you now. The wanderer returns. She says, pouring your drink. Still lost? Maybe. You admit. But I think I've learned how to enjoy it. She smiles. Then you've understood Edo. You sip your tea slowly, letting the warmth settle. Outside, the world glows with 1,000 paper lights swaying in the night breeze. You think about all the people who've passed through this city. Samurai, peasants, courtesans, thieves, and how, somehow, every one of them has left a trace. Edo isn't just a city. It's a memory that keeps dreaming of itself. And as you step back into the night, you realize something simple yet profound. You may not belong to this world, but tonight, for a fleeting moment, it belongs to you. By now, the seasons have turned. The plum blossoms that once decorated Edo's streets have given way to lush green leaves, and the air hums with summer cicadas. You've lived, walked, and breathed this world long enough that it no longer feels foreign. Feudal Japan has seeped into your bones. The rhythm of its villages, the whisper of its bamboo forests, the quiet reverence that lingers in every shrine. But today, something feels different. You sense a shift in the air, the way travelers always know when it's time to move on. You rise early, packing your meager belongings into a small cloth bundle. Outside, mist clings to the rooftops, softening the world into watercolor shades of grey. The city still slumbers. Only a few lanterns flicker in the distance. You make your way toward the outskirts, past temples where monks chant sutras that sound like echoes of time itself. The road feels familiar beneath your feet, smooth in some places, cracked in others, like the veins of a very old hand. You've walked these paths before, but now they feel heavier, carrying the weight of everything you've seen. As you pass a small bridge, you stop to look down at your reflection in the stream. The face staring back at you looks older somehow, not by years, but by understanding. The traveler who first arrived in feudal Japan would have been startled by this version of you, someone who has learned to bow, to wait, to listen more than speak. A farmer greets you as you pass his field. You're leaving the city, heading wherever the road goes. You answer. He laughs. That's every road in Japan. Then maybe I'll take them all. You reply with a grin. He nods approvingly. If you walk long enough, even a circle feels like progress. You thank him and continue on. The countryside opens like a memory, terraced fields shimmering with dew, scarecrows standing guard like wary soldiers, the faint call of a distant flute drifting on the wind. You pause at a roadside shrine you hadn't noticed before. The offering box is empty, dust coating its edges. You place the folded haiku from the samurai inside, pressing it flat against the wood. For safe passage. You whisper. Then you tie the calligrapher's poem beside it, letting it flutter in the breeze. 2 stories left behind, merging with countless others offered to forgotten gods. The journey carries you toward a small mountain village. The air grows thinner, the world quieter. You find shelter for the night in a humble inn, sharing the tatami room with a wandering monk and a merchant. Over dinner, pickled radish, rice, and miso, you trade stories of Edo. The city never sleeps, the merchant says wistfully. Even the shadows there have schedules. The monk chuckles. And yet, the stars still shine above it. That's the secret of Japan. We live in layers. The noise below, the silence above. You listen quietly, realizing how right he is. This land is made of layers, past over present, silence over chaos, duty over desire, and somewhere in between, life continues, steady as the tide. The next morning, you climb a nearby hill to watch the sun rise. The world spreads out beneath you, valleys filled with mist, distant villages, rice paddies glinting like mirrors. It's breathtaking and fleeting. The kind of beauty that refuses to stay still. Historians still argue whether this era was truly peaceful or just paused between storms. But standing here, you understand that maybe peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the brief breath between one lifetime and the next. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, feeling the damp air fill your lungs. Every sound, the buzzing cicadas, the rustling grass, the faraway bell from a feels sharper now, like the world is saying farewell in its own quiet way. When you open your eyes again, the mist has begun to rise, revealing the path leading down the mountain. You start walking, your sandals crunching softly against the gravel. The road twists ahead, endless and uncertain. And yet you don't feel lost. You feel alive. Because maybe you wouldn't have lasted a day in feudal Japan. Not with its rigid rules, its hierarchies, its quiet dangers. But somehow, you've lasted long enough to understand it. You've eaten its food, walked its fields, sat in its temples, and shared laughter under its lanterns. You've learned that survival here isn't about strength or status. It's about grace. The quiet, enduring kind. You stop once more, looking back at the land spread beneath you. The wooden roofs, the shimmering rivers, the pale outline of Edo in the distance. A final bow, not of submission, but of gratitude. And then you turn toward the road again, stepping forward into the soft golden light of morning. The journey fades now, like ink dissolving in water. You can still feel the rhythm of footsteps on gravel, the soft hum of cicadas, the warmth of a paper lantern swaying in a summer breeze. It's as if feudal Japan still breathes, quietly somewhere behind your closed eyelids, a world suspended in time, waiting for your return. Let the noise of Edo drift away. The shouting merchants, the laughter from the tea houses, the ringing of temple bells. Let it all melt into something softer, like rain falling on tatami mats. Your breathing slows. The past folds itself neatly, like a kimono placed back in its chest. Every face you met, the samurai with his melancholy haiku, the fisherman on the river, the monk with his cryptic wisdom, they blur together now, becoming a single, gentle truth. Life, no matter the century, is always about finding balance. The air cools. The world quiets. You feel the weight of centuries lifting from your shoulders, replaced by something lighter, an understanding that even fleeting moments can feel eternal when lived fully. So rest now. Let your thoughts wander like fireflies across a summer night. You've walked far enough for one lifetime. Feudal Japan fades into a dream, and you drift with it, slowly, peacefully, endlessly. Sweet dreams.